is NHS GP Dr. Ellie Cannon. Dr. Cannon, good evening. Thank you for joining us. Obviously, everybody all over the world, but most particularly her fans and her followers and those of us who've admired her enormously ever since she first came to our attention when Prince William fell in love with her all those years ago. You know, shocked to the core and very, very concerned and worried and sad for her and for all she's going through, and for William too, and for the children, of course, her family. But she's told us that this cancer was discovered during what was an abdominal operation. So it sounds a little similar to what we found out about the king, her father-in-law, that it was meant to be his operation, a routine operation for an enlarged prostate gland, and it happened that cancer was found during the operation. It sounds kind of eerily similar, and I wanted to ask you whether that is a very unusual thing, or whether it is fairly common that cancer might be discovered when nobody's really looking at it during an operation for something else.
Well, I think sort of what's uncommon here is that Kate is relatively young, and she's somebody who everybody assumes is sort of fit and healthy, certainly always looks very fit and healthy and active. And even to have abdominal surgery for a benign reason at her age would be unusual. And then for whatever reason, she had that surgery, whether something was removed, perhaps a mass or a polyp or whatever it was that was sort of taken out during surgery. What has happened is they've assumed from scans and from tests that that was benign. It would have looked benign. And then when they've actually looked at whatever that was, it's been taken out under the microscope, what's called the pathology, the histopathology. They've actually discovered cancerous cells, which is why she's now being offered chemotherapy. So the whole scenario, really, from start to finish, I would say, is quite unusual, is quite uncommon. She's a young, healthy woman. We don't expect young, healthy women to have abdominal surgery, and we certainly don't expect them to have cancer.
When you say it's uncommon, it's unusual, does that mean that, in your professional opinion, you might consider that she might have been unwell earlier, more unwell than anybody might have known? Or is it more likely that it would have been a sudden onset symptom or pain or something of that kind that led to this, as you say, unexpectedly urgent operation for somebody young and fit?
I mean, I would imagine, as I say, being a sort of young, healthy woman, and knowing, having patients sort of in that sort of arena, they sort of tend to be sort of very familiar with their own bodies and tend to sort of be familiar with symptoms. And if you are well, then you know what it feels like to suddenly feel unwell. So I'm sure things were picked up very quickly. It may have been that something within her body stopped working very suddenly, or maybe that she had very acute pain when this was found. So it's obviously difficult for anybody to speculate. And even as a doctor, I think it's hard and probably not very useful to speculate. But of course, we know that it has now been discovered, and it's incredibly positive that they feel they can offer her chemotherapy now to treat what was there and to prevent any further growth.
Tell me about that a little bit, because one of the phrases that Kate used that I think ignites a flame of hope, not just in her and her family, but in everybody else just dealing with the news and hearing it for the first time and trying to kind of encompass and think about what does this mean and how serious is this really, is the phrase preventative chemotherapy. That phrase sounds to me hopeful. It sounds as if it's a kind of, as I recall having treatment myself at one stage in my life, when they talked about belt and braces, you know, they're doing this to make sure it doesn't get worse, hoping that that will succeed and it will be successful. Is that what preventative chemotherapy means? Can we read anything positive into it? I hope we can.
Yes, I think so. I think so. So if we sort of think about cancer treatment, we think about surgery when you actually cut out the tumour, and you remove all parts of the tumour that can be seen. And then the idea sort of chemotherapy and other treatments that we now do are to remove even the one sort of last cell, the microscopic one last iota of cancer that could be there, that could then result in a further cancer. So that's why it's preventative. So the idea is, as you quite rightly said, belt and braces, get absolutely everything so this can't come back. So we are preventing any recurrence or any further growth.
And I'm just going to read you one sentence of the Princess's incredibly courageous and brave statement. She says, "As you can imagine, this has taken time. It has taken me time to recover from major surgery in order to start my treatment. But most importantly, it has taken us time to explain everything to George, Charlotte and Louis in a way that is appropriate for them and to reassure them I am going to be okay." Do you feel that the nation and the watching world can take similar assurance and reassurance that she will be okay?
Yes, absolutely. And I think, cancer treatment nowadays is incredibly individualized, and we look at the individual, both their background health, but also their genetics and the genetics of their cancer. And I think we have to look at the fact that, as I say, she has, we think, background of very good health, went into the operation healthy, thankfully has the best medical care that she could have, and this has all been picked up, and she's having a lot of support. So I think it should be optimistic. I think it's incredibly difficult to explain all of this to adults, but even more so to her children around her, who are very young to be going through this with their mother. And I can understand it's obviously been a very difficult time for them, and very distressing, and totally understandable, actually, that they've now decided to make this announcement, presumably coinciding with school holidays and everybody's at home together, and they've all got this time to process.